the next thing I'm going to do is go and make something to put the cloth, you know, the twine through. By the way, if you do want to go and press your seams, again, go for it. I should have maybe finger pressed it a bit before I closed it all up, but I'm going to be slapdash. Apparently that's not a word that is known to you lovely people over in the States, or certainly not one lady who said she had to go and look it up. I'm going to be slapdash and not press my seams. I'm just going to finger press them open like that. So, in order to know how long I want my loops to be, I want to find how long it is halfway, and I'm going to put them, I don't want that seam to be in the gap, do you see? Because I'm going to put a piece here, a channel here, and a channel here, with my drawstrings coming here, like that. And I don't want that, where the drawstrings come, to be where the seam is. That makes sense. So I'm going to put the seam halfway like that-ish. I'm not measuring. And now I am going to measure. I'm going to measure that. Now when I look back at the video yesterday, I do apologise, when I used my big square template measury thing, it was very glary and you got a nice reflection of my ring light. So I'm going to just pull it away from me and measure it against the edge of my cutting mat here, just out of shot. And unsurprisingly it's 11 inches because, if you remember, my piece was 22 inches long. So I need 2 strips that are 11 inches long. And I'm hoping I've got enough here somewhere of this, because I think that as the channel. Will it be nice? I think it will be nice because it goes with the lining. Actually, this should do, shouldn't it? Because this was the right length. This was the bit I tore off for the lining. So if I cut that in half, it should be just the job. I'm going to do that. I'm just going to double check. I'm fairly sure that was the piece. It must have been, because it's... Yeah, that's 12. So that gives me 11, and that gives me half an inch to turn under each end for a seam. Is that enough? I was going to do a double seam, but I can probably get away with a single. Yeah, let's just... Sorry. You're hearing my brain work. I hope it's not... too taxing for you. Sorry again. Right, so I'm just tearing that in half. Whoops. And that's happening because it's a lovely old sheet. Doesn't matter. So, and I'm going to tell you how wide they are. Obviously the 11 inches with yours might vary unless you happen to, unless you want to make the same size and you twine a base that's 7 inches exactly across, in which case then, if you succeed in doing that, then your side piece will be 22 inches, the same as mine, plus your seam allowances. So, and then these are 12 inches long. Ideally I would have liked them to be 13 inches, but they're 12, so I have to live with it. And width-wise they are 5. They're 5 inches width-wise. So if I fold them like that, and stitch them into my bag, then I've got, I can get a good ½ inch trapped down in the seam, and then that will leave me with 2 inches standing proud of the bag for the cords to run through, and I think that'll be just fine. Okay, so first job I'm going to do is turn under a ½ inch seam, and now you're a bit far up. I'll hold anything up that I think you need to do close. And also, I've mentioned it a few times now, a lady in the comments a while ago said you can zoom videos on YouTube by doing that thing if you've got a touch screen. And I'm trying to say it everywhere because it's brilliant. I mean, I'm doing it now if I watch other people's videos. And I'm passing it on to you all. Y'all, that's an American thing, isn't it? Is that in the south of America where you say y'all? I'm sorry, it's probably an awful interpretation of it. Couple of pins. We'll pin both ends while we're about it. It doesn't actually matter if they don't meet, when I stitch them onto the bag. If there's a little gap in between, doesn't matter. Things won't fall out. I've turned under, but I want to pin from this side because I'm going to sew from this side to make sure that my stitches look nice on the good side. Now, the next question is, am I going to just use this? There's not much of it in there. I don't want to use something fancy. I think I want something a bit fancier. Let's go in the aughts again. Now, we're not going to use that vintage stuff that let me down. Try out this. I know it's pink, but it's been in tea. No, it's still a bit pink. Excuse me, talk amongst yourselves while I find a bit of thread. Speaking of talking amongst yourselves, there's a private Facebook group that I set up in the time that I'm in now. You might be watching this, I don't know when. About a week ago, I think not even. And there's already getting on for 600 lovely people in there, all sharing pictures. That's good. All sharing pictures of their weekly projects that they're making with the stitch along, and rice bags, and cloth twine, and meditation scrolls, and also I don't know what else. So if you're not in that group and you'd like to be, it's only for my subscribers. It's exclusive it is, but it's really a lovely atmosphere already. So if you want to be in that group, if you follow the link that I'll put down there, and you just have to answer a simple question, which is, do you subscribe to my channel? And agree to the rules, which are, it's only things related to my channel. And I'll let you in. I got a knot. I'm going to waste a tiny bit of thread and cut that off. I'm now wondering if this is enough to do all four ends. But if it isn't, I'll use something different. That's the only problem with the aughts. You have to check you've got enough. Do you know that word, aughts? It actually means just odds and ends, leftovers, but in the sewing world it's mostly used to refer to threads. So I'm just coming through with my knot and leaving it like that, because that edge is going to be trapped in between the lining and the outer of the bag, so it'll be held again by that. Whoops. What's happening here now? Why is this thread being naughty? There we go. That's quite a good colour actually. Oh, it's got a bit twisty or something. Be gentle with it and then it'll behave. You can't get cross and start yanking at it because it'll just rebel and act up even more. So I'm probably going to not do all four of these ends on the video. I'll probably edit some out. I was earlier, like for example, what took a long time, the Borrow Inspired Journal that ended up in 4 parts. I was stopping and starting, you know, when I was doing great long things that were making it too long. But now I've found it easier to just leave the camera running and just sit here in silence and then edit afterwards. It's, you know, I'm learning. I'm relatively new to all this video editing and so on. It's a steep learning curve. But actually, the more I'm coming to terms with the technology and everything, the more I'm enjoying it and seeing it also as a creative process. Right, that's one side done. I'm going to go through to the inside. Not that it matters, because again that'll be trapped. I could have just finished it off there. I'll just do a couple of back stitches. And I'm going to go and do exactly the same thing to the other 3 seams. Okie dokie, so I have stitched all my little side seams down. And what I think I'm going to do is fold that in half to find the middle. Actually, that's not really necessary at this stage. Anyway, I'm going to sew this first to the lining. So how I'm going to do that is, and I've got it sort of marked roughly in half with the seam, like I said, in the middle of that side. You see that? Yeah. I'm going to attach this, so I've got the folded part and right sides out, pointing downwards. So I'm going to attach this to the lining like that. Just once, I could do two sides of it. I'm going to do two sides of it. See, I'm making this up as I go along. Just, I think if I attach it like that to the lining, like that, and you see what I'm on about. Yeah, if I attach it like that to the lining, then I'm going to fold that in, fold that down and whip stitch. Yeah, that's what I'm going to do. So I've got it folded in half. I might edit that out, I might leave it in. Maybe you'd like to hear me making it up as I go along. So I've got this folded in half, right sides out, and I'm going to hold the two edges up against the lining and match the edges and pin that on. I'm actually going to turn it round because that side is prettier than that side, and so I want that to be on the outside. I'm going to turn it around like that and tuck it inside there. Actually, it's probably easier if I get the lining out like this. Again, if I undo what I just did. Now, I did think about it before, because obviously I tore this off the lining, that I could have left the lining longer and folded it in, but then I would have had to do something. At one end obviously there'd have been a seam, but at the other end it would have been a continuous loop, so I would have had to cut a hole or something to get my cords out on that side. So that's why I didn't do that, in case you were wondering. So right sides together, so the folded part is going down inside of the lining, and I'm going to pin it. And it doesn't matter if it's not exactly central because it's a round bag. My only issue was that I didn't want this seam to be here where the other seams are. But if you want to measure it and make it exactly central, if you feel that's important, you do that. So I just put a few of my little pins. All the way along. The other option I've heard some people said about the rice bag with regards to putting your twisty twiny ties in, whatever you're using for the closure, is that they put them through before they stitch this on. You could absolutely do that. I have no problem threading them through afterwards, and I find they would get in the way if I had them all hanging in there now. But I'm just saying it because people suggested it and people had successfully done it, so I'm just offering it as an option. And I'm going to use this piecing thread again. I'm going to find my needle. Where's it gone? Sorry, that was a strange sound. I sucked my teeth. You know that? I won't do it again. That teeth sucking sound. My hands have warmed up a bit as well. I actually, while I paused to do all that other stitching on the edges of these loopy bits, I twined my twisty twine at the same time. I think that warmed my fingers up. Bit of finger yoga. Make a knot. So, and I'm going to do a 1/2 inch seam because that was what I'd allowed on the side of the bag, at top and bottom. So I'm just, it's quite thick here. I've pulled my knot through now. It's quite thick here where I've got the double fold. So I've got 5 layers of cloth to get through just where I'm in this seam. I might have to stab stitch, but I do want this end to be secure, these ends, because that's where the cord's going to be pulling in and out. Don't do that thing, that's so naughty. So I'm going to come through and back a couple of times, I think, just to make sure it's really, really secure. And up again. Right, and off we go. Oh no, we're still in the thick. We're still in the thick of it. done his work. Right, and off we go. And I'm just going to do a normal running stitch. You could again do the back stitchy thing if you felt it was necessary. And I maybe would do it if I wasn't, oh, for goodness sake. You know, if you weren't all watching me. But it'll be fine. It's for me. And also, I think I said it earlier, if I was making it as a gift or to sell, I probably would do the back stitchy thing as well. Because it's one thing if it comes apart and it's mine, I can just mend it, but I'd hate it to come apart for someone else. The marks on this eco print are so lovely. And also it's, because I did it with my friend, like I said, it's all the plants from her garden. So it's a nice little memory. It's another lovely thing about eco printing. I used to do it a lot when I used to go camping. We had a big canvas bell, well we still got it, a big canvas bell tent, 5 metres diameter. I don't know if you know the type, they've got one big central pole. And then it comes out at the sides with guy ropes, and then there's another construction like an A-frame for the doorway, but apart from that there's not all those poles and things you have to put together, you know, with modern tents. It's fun when you lay out the canvas and you have to crawl in with it laying on the ground with the pole in your hand. You have to crawl under it like, you know, like when someone's done a parachute jump and the parachute all lands on them. It feels a bit like that, I imagine. I've never done a parachute jump. The very thought is terrifying. But anyway, so you crawl in with the pole and then you push the pole up in the middle of the tent and it goes up. Suddenly you create space. It's a wonderful feeling. Why was I talking about that? Oh yes, camping. So often where we'd camp, we used to camp quite often on Exmoor in England, on this lovely campsite on a farm that was quite basic, which was what I liked. And you were allowed to have fires because a lot of places at certain times of year you can't have fires, but you were allowed as long as they were in a fire pit. And you were right next to a river, so maybe that had something to do with it. So I would gather leaves, fallen leaves, and, you know, bits and bobs from around on our walks, and always take some cloth with me. And I had a little camping cauldron, as I called it, which was a little, still got it, a little battered aluminium pot, just a small one, and a couple of small sticks and some string with me. And then I would do a bit of eco printing after I'd cooked the evening meal on the fire. And in that way you've got a memory of the place, you know, literally you've got the leaves and other plant materials that you've found, seeds and cones and, you know, all that kind of thing. So you've got a little cloth, and actually one of the scrolls, I pointed at it in the studio tour. It's the big long one that's on the cardboard tube, and it's quite wide. I think it's about 10 or maybe even 12 inches wide. But that's all pieced together, little scraps of cloth that I eco-printed whilst camping there on Exmoor. So that is a memory of that. Right, I'm through to the seams again, so I'm going to do the in and out thing. Fred hair. No video would be complete without a bit of Fred hair. There we go, and I'm going to go through and back a couple more times. There we go, and a little back stitch. Oops, come on, bite some cloth. Maybe two. I think I'm going to leave my needle attached because the other piece should, all being well. So then that now will, just to show you what I mean, that will come up like that. So that'll be what you'll see. Quite neat. Quite neat. And then the outside of the bag will come up and turn under, and I'll get whip stitched over that seam line. I'll show you when we get there. So now I need my other bit. Get it the right way. So right side out. Excuse me, I need to fold. I'll just finger press. That's lovely. That's actually my friend in her garden is a little pond with a red acer. That's a print off. Can you see that? Yeah, you can. That's a print off that tree of hers. So do I want that on the outside or that? There's some roses. I think I want the acer on the inside because that's darker and the other side was darker. So, hang on, I have to flip my brain around now. So I want that to be there, like that. So I need to do that. Yes. Do you see? Do you see what I'm doing? Fiddling about. So that's the outs. That's going to be on the outside because when I've sewn that seam, it'll flip up like that, and that's the inside. So I'm going to see if it matches exactly, since I didn't measure my seams. So I'll put a pin there just to hold it so I've butted it right up. And if when I get to the other end it doesn't butt right up, I'll just adjust it so the gap's even between the two. Maybe I'll do another pin along the way just to make it easier for myself. Now you see there's a gap, which is absolutely fine. I'm not bothered. There's a gap of about that much, so I need to be half. So what I'm going to do now is that's about halfway the gap there. I'm just going to do that. This is really guesstimating because that's how I roll. And so now I'm going to pin it going back the other way. I nearly put a pin in my mouth, which would have been very naughty. And here I'm coming up to the side seam of the bag, so I'm going to make sure it's open because then it will be flatter and less bulky. I'm going to get that pin out because that needs to move a bit. No, nearly went in the mouth again. Honestly, it's such a bad habit that's really hard to break. Even though I've heard the horror stories about what's happened to people that have put pins and needles in their mouths. I can remember my mum doing it when she was making dresses for me as a child, you know, and you have to stand on a little stool while she takes up the hem. Those of you that have been lucky enough to have lovely people make clothes for you. And those gaps are not even. Do I want to move it? Probably. I'm just going to move it slightly. Yeah, you know that thing when you're stood on something and the dressmaker, whoever that may be, is pinning up the hem. I can still, if I close my eyes, see my mother crouched down there, telling me to keep still probably. So it's probably a fidget while she pinned up the hem, but with a mouthful of pins. So, you know, with pins like a porcupine, like she had a porcupine in her mouth. Naughty mummy. See, it's her fault. I'll tell her next time I see her. Saying through a mouthful of pins, saying, "Keep still, Catherine, or I'll pin you by accident." And me fidgeting. Right, where's my needle gone now after all that? There we go. So all I'm going to do is sneak through what is the seam allowance with a few little stitches just to get me in the right place. Do you see? So I've gone right up into the seam allowance rather than break off and join back on. Make sure that lines up somewhat. And go back down to where I should be. And come back up and make sure I'm back on my sort of rough ½ inch that I'm doing. There we go, that's where I should be. I'm going to go up and down a couple more times. And I'm going to do exactly the same thing around the other seam. So I will go and do that, and then I'll be back for the finishing off part. Okay, I've done that. So I've sewn both sides on. You see it makes for a quite neat finish on the inside, and when you fold it up, those seams just all go down nicely. Can you see? Go down nicely. So what I need to do now is get the outer part back up where it belongs. I'll do a bit more ruffling about. There we go. And I'm going to turn that in like that. Oh, you can see it's still a bit up in your face. Just like that. And then, and that little gap there is fine, the seam just sits down nicely. And then I need to fiddle about with the excuse me, with the outer to get it to the right height. So I'll try and do that laying flat because I think that's easier for you to see. So I need to turn this in and line it up. Well, maybe you can see, but I can't. Excuse me a minute. That's okay. And just make sure, you see I've used a neutral thread there that you can hardly see, but let me get away from that seam so maybe it's clearer. I just want to make sure that when I turn that over and stitch that down to there, that I hide that seam line. Do you see what I mean? Do you see that seam line? It needs to be under there. So I think I'm going to start it. And I'm just turning under again a 1/2 inch-ish. Should be about right. It's a bit more tricky with the collage cloth because you've got all these other cloths overlapping and, you know. But you can do it. I have every faith in you. Whether I can do it is another matter. That's okay. So that looks neat enough there. I'm going to put a pin in it. Maybe these little pins are not robust. Oh, yes, they are. I thought maybe I might need to get the big pins out, but so just work your way around, making sure you're hiding that stitching line. Nice little bit of lace there. It's a bit of vintage lace. It was a lace doily that I cut up to get the little circles out, and it's been in the indigo. Hope you can see what I'm doing. It's always that balance between being able to see myself and being able to make sure you can see. And the eco print works so nicely with these other cloths. I think because they're tea dyed most. Well, there's some eco prints in there as well, but this sort of commercial and natural dyes is a bit of madder that I'm coming up to now. You see, there's that seam. I'm going to pin to the side of it. It's a bit thick. Yeah, because the commercial cloth has been tea dyed, it all blends. I just like the grungy look. I like bright colours when I see it in other people's work, and I used to do it myself. If you've seen my studio tour, you'll have seen some of my older work with the bright colours. But these days, I think probably because of the eco printing, I like all my other cloths to be grunged up as well. So that's one side done. The other side is gone down in there. It's hiding. It's naughty. Loose thread. We'll tuck that in. And so these little gaps here, I need to make sure as well that I... Ow! Bit me. Naughty. But luckily it's little. It's only got one little tooth. It doesn't hurt that much. But it did bite me, the little pin. A little monkey. I'll just put a pin in the gap there and carry on working my way around. I'm hoping, actually, I should have checked that before. Do you see my lining slightly bigger than my outer? I might have to do some repinning around there just to make it behave. So having realised that now, I'm going to slightly stretch my outer, and not gather, but just make sure my lining's not stretched. Do you know what I mean? Again, if you've done proper traditional quilting and you've fitted borders onto things and things like that, you'll maybe understand what I'm talking about. So I don't want to gather that liner, but I want to make sure it's laying flat, but as squished up as it can be without being gathered. But if you do it, you check before you start. It's because I didn't measure my seam allowances and things, that's my stitching line there. That red stitching line isn't straight, so we're going to have to lose a bit of it. There's so much going on. See there, it's going to dive down behind. There's so much going on. I don't think it's going to be noticeable. It's just when you make these things up as you go along, things like that happen. And it's part of, for me, the slow stitch mode of working, that you just embrace that. Ow, poked myself, that was my own fault. I had my hand behind. It may even be that my easing, that's the word, you ease it in. I've still got a little bit there, do you see? I'll get rid of that, fear not. Right. One more, and then I'll re-pin the other side. See, there's a little pucker there, which I hope I can get rid of. Otherwise, I'm going to have to adjust. I'm going to have to unpin this and do something with the seam, which would be slightly a pain. Okay, I've eased my lining so it fits. What I would recommend that you do to learn from my mistake, it's not a mistake, there are no such things as mistakes, well it was, is before you stitch on your top and bottom, just get your lining and your outer in position like this, but without these two things stitched on, not the top and bottom, what we calling them, the channels. Just check that your lining and your outer are roughly the same size. And if they're not, at that point then you could adjust this seam here at the top, in or out, to make it fit. The other thing, full disclosure, is my two little gaps at the side. That's a small gap and that's a slightly bigger gap. But I'm not, So just be aware of that if that is something that would bother you. So all I'm going to do now is, now I've got that all pinned, is whip stitch round from here into there. So I'm going to find a way in somewhere in a secret little hidey hole to bury my knot. I'm just using the same piecing thread that I used before. That knot is going to be annoying. I'll trim that off in a minute. I'm going to do a couple of stitches on the spot in there to secure before I start. Just into the lining. I'm going to get rid of that pin, and I'm going to trim that off like I said at the end. And so I'm just taking a little bite, you can see now because it's a bit big to have it any closer. I'm just taking a little bite of the lining and then coming in behind the outer. And I'm just going to do that all the way around. I'll do a little bit on camera, and then I'll probably go and do it on my lonesome and come back when I've done it for the final thing, which will be putting the what do you call them? The strings. Honestly, can't get my words out today. The cloth twine that I'm using. Obviously you could use a bit of ribbon or lace or strips of cloth or sturdy string or, you know, whatever. But if you know anything about me at all, you'll know I like to use my twine. If you don't know how to make twine, if you haven't seen that video, I will put a link down there. So see, I'm keeping the stitch straight, as I said before when I was stitching along the bottom, and going into the lining and then jumping across a little bit. If you know how to do whip stitch, you know what I mean. But, you know, there may be people who don't, so that's why I'm saying it. So with this colour thread on this cloth and with these tiny stitches, it's virtually invisible. So there's probably really no point in me showing you because you can't see. If I just hold it up, you see my teeny tiny stitches. So I'll go away and finish that and then I'll be back again. Okay, I've gone all the way around, I'm coming back towards the beginning. So I'll just take my last couple of stitches. You can see. I'm sorry those of you who are cross with me for stopping it, and you know, I've had some people say, oh, just do the whole thing on camera. It does get unimaginably long if I do that, and I could break it up into several videos. And sometimes I did that with the Borrow Journal video. But sometimes I just like to, you know, do something of a reasonable length. So many apologies if you are cross with me for going and doing that off camera. Please don't be cross with me. So here at the end, I'm going to have to do some fiddling about because it's gone slightly uneven. I just wanted to show you that either side of the channel parts, I want to take 2 or 3 stitches extra, just because that's going to get pulled on, you know, when you're opening and closing the bag. Those are the stress points. Go through the loop. There we go. And then for the little bits there where there's no channel, if you've got a gap or 2 gaps, hopefully your 2 gaps are the same size. I'm sure they will be. Just whip stitch the two, you know, the lining and the outer together, like that. And then when I come back in here, I'm going to do a couple more extra stitches again. And actually I was naughty and silly. I shouldn't have started here because it's a stress point. I should have started somewhere up here. So again, learn from the error of my ways. That's really hard to get through now. I'm going to call that good enough. So I'm just going to go in there somewhere and finish off with a couple of back stitches, and then the loop-de-loop thingy-bob. When you pull it through, you go through your loop twice, you pull it up snug, and then you anchor that little, it's not really a knot, but you know, pseudo knot, and then you bury your thing somewhere in there and snip that off. And then all that remains is to put the ties in. Before I do that, while it's still relatively flat, I'll just show you the stitching. Maybe you didn't see enough of it before. It's over my hands like a muff. I think maybe I did show you enough of it before, but you know, there was many evenings of work, which is why I did not do it on video. Slow stitching after all. Okay, so is that right up in your face? I'll lay it flat again. So I've got my cloth twine. Again, I'll put a link if you don't know how to make them. They are the same length. I've got 2 of them, and they're both the same length as the perimeter of the bag, which is 22 inches. So they're 22 inches long. If you're making twine, you need your strips to start with to be a good 3 or 4 inches longer, because the twining process makes them shorter, and you need your knots. Now what I've thought of, because normally I would probably use a big safety pin or something, why not use, if you've watched my bookbinding videos, you'll see how ridiculously excited I get about the giant paper clips. So I thought I could use this, and I did try it off camera first. Just get it in between the two strands of the twine, like that. Do you see? And then use that. I'm sure other people have thought of it, but you know, when these things come to you and you're ridiculously pleased with yourself, you want to share, don't you? Look how easy that is. Ooh. So I'm just going in from one side, all the way through that channel, like so. Make sure you don't pull it right the way through, because then you'll have to just keep going. And then I'm going to go through the other side, through the other channel, so it stops and starts in the same place. Like that. You could, of course, as well, because they are a bit on the neat side. To be honest, they shrunk a bit more than I thought they were going to. So they're just long enough, but they just need to be long enough so you can open your bag fully up. Do you see that they're at their limit there now? And I'm going to have to put a knot in the two together, so it is going to be slightly gathered like that. So you want them to be a good 2 or 3 inches longer if you want your bag to, you know, be better than mine. Let's get it off there. I think I'm going to undo the 2 knots there, which will buy me a bit more length, and then knot them together, back together again. So for now I'm going to leave them like that and hope they don't disappear on me back inside. So then the other twine needs to go in the opposite direction to the first twine, so that the 2 ends are opposite. So you need to start and stop over here. So again, we'll use my genius invention, which is probably known to everybody in the world who's got a giant paperclip and has ever done this, but it's only just occurred to me, of the giant paperclip, and go through the other way. The other thing you could do, if you made a bag like this and you wanted to use it as a handbag, for example, I think in America you call it a purse, whereas in England certainly a purse is a wallet, a lady's wallet usually, and a handbag is, you know, what you call a purse. But anyway, if you want to make it into a bag that you use, that you carry about with you, you could trap in here a long shoulder strap or 2 handles, you know, something like that, if you wanted to. This will be probably more for storage or carrying projects around, or not entirely sure yet what I'm going to use it for. So I didn't want an extra handle on it. And back to the beginning. Have I pulled my other one through? Yes, I have. Come back. He's still there. I can get him. Stay there. I'm going to hold on to those while I pull that. There we go. Yeah, and then you could absolutely use it as a handbag, stroke purse, stroke whatever. So then you get your 2 ends each side, and it closes up somewhat neatly. So there we go. A little duffel bag, bucket bag, I don't know. I'll think of a name for it, which, like I said, you'll know. And then to open it up, you just get your fingers in there and open it up. And my twine's pulled back through because it's too short, but I'll go and sort that out. So I hope that you'll have a go. It sits so nicely when it's got the, I'll show you its bottom, when it's got its cloth twine bottom, because it's got a bit of firmness to it. And I don't mind it squashy like that. In fact, I like it. But if you wanted it more structured, you could put, like I said earlier, something in there. So that's my bucket bag slash whatever I'm going to call it, slash duffel bag thing. I hope that's given you some ideas and you like that. And thank you very much for watching. I look forward to you joining me next time for more cloth tales. Bye bye.